Good morning, and we're in chapter 7. So Haman thought he was going to a wonderful banquet with the king and queen, thought he was going to have all these accolades on him, finds out that Mordecai is the one that they wanted to have accolades, but he's looking forward to the banquet because he thinks, hey, I'm still in with the king and the queen. And so the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther, on the second day of that banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to half of the kingdom. So he's really given her quite a lot of thought of what he's willing to give. And Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. So she's asking for her own life as a petition, and her people's life as her request. Not half the kingdom, for we are sold, and I and my people be destroyed, to be slain, to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. So I guess basically she's saying, I mean, even if we're sold as bondmen and bondwomen, I probably wouldn't have said anything, but we're talking about death here. And there's an enemy here that is trying to undermine all these things. Now, the king signed that the Jews could die according to Haman's request, that he give him the money. But it does seem to me in this part of the story that the king didn't understand all that he was getting. I think he was more going, oh, I got all this money from Haman for him to go and do what he wants to do. And then Haman does the rest. And then King Ahasuerus answered and said unto the queen, who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? I think also at this point, he hasn't tied that Esther is a Jew and that is the Jews that Haman had requested for. That would be her people. And the adversary, and Esther said, the adversary and mine and enemy is this wicked, notice she puts wicked in there, Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and queen. You just get this, again, this satire that was mentioned in the last chapter, this satire of this wicked Haman. And you can just see this as one of those plays where he's the bad guy and these are the good guys, And the king arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath went to his palace garden. And Haman, so he went away because he's saying, okay, I've got to cool down a little bit and think about this, because up to this point he only knew that Haman was supposed to be up there really close. He's taken advice from Haman for some time, and now he's being told that his advice is not very good, which it isn't. But so he went into the garden to cool down a little bit, to think about this. And Haman stood up to make a request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw there was evil determined against him by the king and by Esther. But yeah, he said, come on, just give me a chance, and I think it's interesting that he stood up. We don't get the whole picture here, but it's interesting what happens here. Then the king returned out of the palace in the garden, unto the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. So usually in these places they kind of have a way that the food is like low down, and they usually lay down on things. I'm guessing that that's what it is, and that he had fallen and was pleading for his life to Esther. But what the king sees is, will he force the queen also before me in the house? So he's trying to hit on my wife, that sort of thing. As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. So the servants went, nope, okay. And Harbonah, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold, also the gallows 50 feet high, which Haman had made for Mordecai. Oh, yeah, by the way, there are those gallows, the really tall ones. I don't know if they were 50 cubits high, what it was. That seems, again, part of the satire. This is just way out, really high, much higher than you need. Who has spoken good for the king, and standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So it's like, oh, you can see, again, this playing out, that just seems like he's getting his comeuppance. Everything you want in a good story, the bad guy getting it in the end. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. And that was the end of Haman. And we'll discover the rest of the fallout next time.